The grand mahogany clock in the lobby of the Crimson Heritage chimed 8, its mellow tone lost in the morning bustle, but for Eleanor Vance, it was a sound she measured her life by. 8 chimes meant her shift had officially begun. 6 years of 8 chimes. 6 years of polishing this same brass. She adjusted her housekeeping cart, the left wheel giving the same pathetic squeak it had last week, despite her request to maintenance. It was just another small, daily reminder of her invisible status. The lobby itself was warm, a stark contrast to the chilly gray Boston morning whipping leaves past the grand entrance. The air smelled faintly of old wood polish, cinnamon, and apples. The hotel had already begun its tasteful Thanksgiving decorating. Tasteful pumpkins and deep red autumn wreaths sat on the periphery, silent reminders of a comfort Eleanor only observed, never felt. She meticulously polished the brass railings of the grand staircase, her movements economical and weary, her burgundy uniform ill-fitting but spotless. She was invisible to the wealthy guests who brushed past, their voices a low hum of breakfast plans and business deals. A couple, clearly tourists, were struggling with a map near the concierge desk, arguing in low, frustrated German. Eleanor understood every word. They were looking for the Freedom Trail and were hopelessly turned around. A familiar ache pulsed in her temples, the urge to help, to simply point them in the right direction. But she knew Mrs. Holloway's #1 rule: staff do not initiate conversation. As if summoned by the thought, the sharp, clicking heels of her manager, Mrs. Diane Holloway, began their predictable patrol across the marble floor. Mrs. Holloway's graying hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her suit was immaculate. Her eyes scanned the lobby with distrust, bypassing a new white employee at the front desk who was blatantly texting, and landing, as they always did, on Eleanor. Mrs. Holloway stopped at the cart. She didn't greet Eleanor. She just stared at the supplies. "Vance," she said, her voice low and sharp. "This cart is a disgrace. Your polished rags are not folded to regulation." Eleanor looked down at her perfectly folded rags, stacked in neat squares. She bit back the exhaustion, the frustration, the simple fact that the new girl was still texting. She replaced it all with the mask of professional politeness she had perfected over 6 years. "Yes, Mrs. Holloway. I'll correct it." As Holloway turned to leave, Eleanor's mind drifted to the 12th rejection email she had received last week. It was for an internal transfer to the HR department, a simple administrative role. Her master's degree in linguistics from Boston University felt less like an achievement and more like a cruel joke. Mrs. Holloway paused and looked back, her eyes cold. "And Vance? Do try to look more pleasant. Guests check in to escape their problems, not to look at, well, yours." We've just seen the challenge Eleanor is facing, and the injustice of her manager's words. If you're here rooting for Eleanor and you heard that 8 o'clock chime that started her day, let us know by commenting with the number 8 below. Your support helps us know you're on this journey with her. And if you haven't already, we warmly invite you to subscribe to Black Brilliance and turn on the bell. You won't want to miss what happens next in Eleanor's story, and your presence here allows us to keep bringing these powerful stories of hidden brilliance to light. Now, let's continue. Tucked into a service alcove behind a large potted fern, Eleanor's personal cell phone, a violation of company policy, vibrated silently against her chest with an international number from Berlin. She froze. Mrs. Holloway's sharp warning from just 30 minutes ago rang in her ears, the threat of immediate termination hanging in the air. This was it. This was the call she'd been waiting for, the potential PhD scholarship. Her last hope. She was on the mezzanine level, a quiet, carpeted area that overlooked the lobby. Above her was another balcony, the one leading to the executive suites. From that balcony, a pair of expensive, handcrafted leather shoes stopped. The man wearing them, Mr. Arthur Finch, was holding his morning Wall Street Journal and a cup of coffee, a daily ritual where he observed his hotel. He paused, his gaze drifting down, not yet focused, just observing. Heart pounding, Eleanor ducked further into the alcove, her back pressed against the wall. She answered the call, her voice a terrified whisper. "Ja, here is Eleanor Vance." The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, and entirely in German. It was Professor Adler. He didn't waste time. He had a complex question regarding her thesis proposal on 19th-century German trade dialects. Instantly, the 6 years of linguistics training took over. The terrified maid vanished, and the scholar emerged. Forgetting her surroundings, Eleanor's voice became confident, her German fluent and academic. Der Unterschied liegt in der Semantik, Herr Professor, nicht nur in der Lexik. The difference is in the semantics, Professor, not just the lexicon. From the balcony above, Mr. Finch lowered his newspaper. He, too, was fluent in German, a skill picked up in his youth in post-war Europe. He recognized her accent, not native, but flawlessly academic. He listened, intrigued. At the exact same moment, Mrs. Diane Holloway rounded the corner on the mezzanine level. She too froze. Her face turned crimson with rage. All she saw was her most problematic maid, hiding behind a plant on a personal call, speaking some foreign language. Eleanor, lost in her academic explanation, finally finished the call. Ich denke Ihnen. Auf Wiederhören. She hung up, her stomach in knots, a sliver of hope mixed with the terror. She turned to exit the alcove and walked directly into Mrs. Holloway, who stood there, vibrating with fury. My office. Now, Holloway hissed, grabbing Eleanor's arm in a painfully tight grip. From the balcony, Mr. Finch watched the manager march the maid away. He didn't intervene. He just sipped his coffee thoughtfully, his eyes sharp, and made a call to his assistant. Get me the personnel file for Vance. Eleanor Vance. From housekeeping. That evening, in her small Somerville apartment, Eleanor ate a bowl of canned tomato soup, the contrast between her humble meal and the 5-star luxury she'd been punished in today feeling like a bitter joke. Mrs. Holloway had been gleeful in that windowless basement office. Conference center bathrooms. 3 months. Maybe that will teach you, she had said, her eyes gleaming. This was Eleanor's lowest point. She sat at her small second-hand kitchen table, her master's diploma hanging on the wall opposite. For the first time, she seriously considered taking it down. The hope that had flared during the German call was now extinguished, replaced by the damp, cold reality of her finances. She couldn't quit. She had student loans. She had to endure the bathrooms. She washed her bowl, set her alarm for an hour earlier, and went to bed. The next morning, she clocked in through the staff entrance in the basement. She was sleep-deprived but resolved, pushing the heavy, industrial cleaning cart, the one reserved for the convention center, when the front desk manager ran up to her, his face pale and out of breath. Eleanor. Thank God. Stop. Eleanor froze, her hand tightening on the cart's handle. Am I fired? The manager shook his head, looking utterly confused. I don't know. Mr. Finch's office just called. The owner's office. They want you upstairs. On the 30th floor. Right now. A cold fear, different and sharper than yesterday's, gripped Eleanor. Firing happened in the basement, in Holloway's office. The 30th floor was for executives, for people who mattered. This was unheard of. She felt the eyes of every staff member in the lobby, the bellhops, the front desk clerks, on her burgundy uniform as the manager, now flustered, directed her toward the private executive elevator. She stood alone in the opulent, wood-paneled elevator, a place she was normally only allowed to enter to polish the brass. She watched the floor numbers climb, each soft ding tightening the knot in her stomach. 10, 20, 28. This had to be a mistake. Or worse, a cruel, elaborate way to fire her for the German call. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime onto a plush, silent carpet. Mr. Finch's executive assistant, a woman in a perfectly tailored suit, stood waiting. She smiled politely, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Ms. Vance? Thank you for coming. Mr. Finch will see you now. We've reached a pivotal moment in our story, and what happens next changes everything. If you are still with us, and if this story is touching your heart, please let us know you're here by commenting with the number 8 below. Your presence lets us know these stories matter. And if you haven't already, we warmly invite you to subscribe to Black Brilliance and turn on the notification bell. Your support is the fuel that allows us to keep bringing these important, inspiring stories to light. Thank you for being part of this community. Now, let's continue. Mr. Arthur Finch's office was nothing like Eleanor expected. It was warm, filled with books and old maps, and smelled of pipe tobacco and strong coffee. The terror she had felt in the elevator evaporated, replaced by a sharp, sudden confusion. A small fire crackled in a real hearth by the wall. Mr. Finch, dressed in the same tweed jacket from yesterday, was standing by the large window overlooking the Boston Common. He turned, and he looked kind. "Miss Vance, thank you for coming. Please sit." "Coffee?" he asked, gesturing to a silver pot on a side table. Eleanor, still clutching her hands together, managed to nod. "Yes, sir. Thank you." He poured a cup and handed it to her. "I despise waste, Miss Vance," he said, taking his own seat behind a large, antique desk. "Wasting heat, wasting food, and most of all, wasting talent." He opened a thin personnel file, her file. Boston University, Masters in Linguistics. 6 languages, including fluent German and Mandarin. He then tapped a second, much thicker and sloppier binder next to it. "My Director of Operations, Mr. Croft, has assured me this conference is handled. But I overheard your call yesterday. You don't just speak German, Ms. Vance, you reason in it." He slid the sloppy binder, marked German/China Conference, Croft vetting, across the desk. "Look at the Mandarin translations. My Chinese partners are particular." Eleanor opened it. Her blood ran cold. The characters were technically correct, but the phrasing was a disaster. It was clearly translation software, and it was offensively blunt. "Sir," she said softly, her professionalism overriding her shock. "This welcome packet, it basically tells the Chinese delegation that we are demanding their submission. It's not a welcome, it's a command." Mr. Finch nodded grimly, as if his worst suspicions were confirmed. "That's what I thought." Mr. Croft hired his nephew's company for $50,000 to produce that. He leaned forward. "Ms. Vance, I have a problem. You are the solution. I need you to fix this. $4,000 for the week. You will be our temporary international relations coordinator." Eleanor looked at the $50,000 invoice paperclipped to the binder, and then at the $4,000 offer for her to fix it. She took a steadying breath. "Mr. Finch, I accept. But I cannot fix this. I must rebuild it, and I'll need a new suit." Mr. Finch smiled for the first time, a genuine warm smile. He pressed the intercom on his desk. "Mary, get Ms. Vance a new keycard, a full advance from petty cash, and have the tailor shop downstairs fit her for 3 suits. She works directly for me now." The next morning, Eleanor Vance, dressed in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, stood not in the basement, but at the entrance of the grand ballroom, a clipboard in her hand. The contrast to her ill-fitting burgundy uniform was absolute. She was the same person, but for the first time, the woman the world saw matched the scholar inside. The air in the ballroom was tense and busy. Trays of fresh coffee, Danish pastries, and mini-muffins were being set out, and the US, German, and Chinese flags were displayed behind the podium. Eleanor, having worked all night, was moving flawlessly. She briefed the catering staff, her voice calm and authoritative, pointing out the seating plan she'd reorganized to respect cultural hierarchies. When the German delegates arrived early, she greeted them with a warm, confident smile, making seamless small talk in German about their flight and the Boston weather, instantly putting them at ease. Just then, Mrs. Diane Holloway marched into the ballroom on her rounds. She saw Eleanor, and her face went through a rapid series of shock, confusion, and outrage. "Vance, what is the meaning of this? Why aren't you in the convention center? Take that suit off and—" Eleanor, without raising her voice, turned and held up her new, high-level ID badge. "Mrs. Holloway, I am overseeing this event for Mr. Finch. Please lower your voice. You are disturbing the delegates." Holloway's mouth snapped shut. Her face turned a pale, sickly color, and she retreated from the ballroom, humiliated. A moment later, Mr. Gerald Croft, the slick director of operations, cornered Eleanor by the coffee station. "I don't know what you think you're doing," he hissed, "but you cost my nephew a contract." Eleanor, holding her clipboard, did not back down. She looked him in the eye. "No, Mr. Croft. Your nephew's incompetence almost cost Mr. Finch a multi-million-dollar partnership. The $50,000 invoice for his Google-translated documents is now with Mr. Finch." As Croft sputtered, trying to form a threat, the head German delegate, a man in his 60s, approached them. Frau Vance? Of the moment. He looked at her name badge and then at her face, a look of dawning recognition. Vance? Are you the E. Vance who wrote the paper on Sino-German trade linguistics? We cite your work at my university in Berlin. Gerald Croft overheard this. His face froze in pure panic. He hadn't just crossed a maid. He had crossed a world-class expert. He immediately walked away, pulling out his phone and making a frantic call. We have a problem. A big one. At 4 p.m., Mr. Finch called an emergency meeting in the executive boardroom, and only one person in the room, Eleanor Vance, was surprised to be there. This second ride up the private elevator hadn't been terrifying, but it was validating. She walked in not as a maid, but as an expert holding the now successful conference documents. The boardroom was ice-cold and silent. Mr. Finch sat at the head of the long mahogany table, looking grave. Mr. Gerald Croft sat on the far side, sweating but trying to look indignant. Mr. Finch began. Gerald, the German conference was a success, no thanks to you. Your translation services were fraudulent. Croft sputtered. It was a simple mistake. A clerical error. This Maid blew it all out of proportion. Mr. Finch didn't raise his voice. He simply nodded to Sarah Jenkins, the young woman from HR, who was also present. Sarah, please share your findings. Sarah opened a thick file. Mr. Croft has personally denied 12 internal transfer requests from Ms. Vance over the last 6 years. He also approved $150,000 in payments to Croft Translations, which is registered to his nephew, for 3 separate events, all of which received formal complaints from international partners. The silence was absolute. Mr. Finch looked at Croft. You are fired. Security will escort you out. He then pressed a button on his phone. Mary, please send Mrs. Holloway in. A moment later, a terrified Diane Holloway entered. Diane, Mr. Finch said, his voice weary. Your prejudice has not only cost this hotel its dignity, but it also aided this fraud by keeping talented people like Ms. Vance invisible. You are suspended, effective immediately, pending reassignment. After both Croft and Holloway had been escorted out, the room was silent. Mr. Finch turned to Eleanor. Ms. Vance, you saved this company from embarrassment and fraud. The position of Director of International Relations is, as of this moment, vacant. The job is yours if you want it. 6 months later. The plaque on the 30th floor office, Mr. Croft's old office, reads, Eleanor Vance, Director of Global Relations. She's on the phone speaking fluent Mandarin when her new assistant, a promising young Latino man she just promoted from the front desk, knocks on her door. Come in, she says, smiling. We have work to do. The story of Eleanor Vance is a quiet reminder that a person's worth is never defined by their uniform. Like a seed hidden in the earth, true talent often just waits for one act of fairness to blossom. When we choose to see past appearances, we open the door to extraordinary potential. If Eleanor's journey resonated with you, please share your thoughts on her story below. For more inspiring content that uplifts and celebrates hidden brilliance, we warmly invite you to join the Black Brilliance community.